Hi, this is Rick Rule, speaking on behalf of Rule Investment Media and the Rule Classroom, sponsors of the 2025 Rule Natural Resources Investment Symposium. This year held July 7 through 11, either live in Boca Raton or via live stream in the comfort and convenience of your own home, wherever that might be. If you've registered for the conference already, please continue to listen to this recording because I'm going to tell you right now how to get the most that you possibly can out of the recording, out of the conference, pardon me. If you haven't registered for the conference, I'm going to give you a few reasons why you ought to register for the conference, but I'm also going to tell you right now how to get the most out of the conference. I believe, and hundreds of people who have attended in the past believe, that our Natural Resource Investment Symposium is the finest single investment event around natural resources on the planet. How much you get out of it really depends on you. The purpose of this phone call is to explain to you how to get more out of the conference, how to get your money's worth out of the conference, your time's worth out of the conference, how to benefit in terms of education, and more importantly, probably how to make money on the conference. And this is of critical importance, I think. This year, perhaps more than any. Uh, People who have been around this space know that the conference has gone on for 30 years. And I have to say that this year's conference threatens to be the most valuable and the most interesting conference that we have ever done. Why is this? Because there are so many forces tugging and pushing on the natural resource investment business. In fact, on the investment business, in fact, on your political and social life. I would suggest to you that the opportunities around the natural resource space and the precious metal space have never been greater. Make no mistake, we're in a precious metals bull market as we speak, and we have a natural resources bull market following on its heels sooner or later. But the challenges have never been greater. The political challenges, the polarization around political challenges, the literally unserviceable debt and obligation of the US and other governments around the world, sanctions, trade, the ugly side of deglobalization, demographic trends. The opportunities have never been greater. The challenges have never been greater. The consequence of that is going to be incredible volatility. Volatility to you is either a threat or it's an opportunity. Whether it's a threat or an opportunity has everything to do with your psychological and your financial preparation for the volatility. The Natural Resources Investment Symposium is meant to equip natural resources and precious metals investors and speculators with the knowledge and the technique to turn this volatility into an opportunity rather than a threat. How do we propose to do this? Well, in the first instance, most great investment conferences have an underlying macro theme, and our conference is no difference. The macro theme that we talk about, however, is not the kind of macro theme that you would see on CNBC or Fox or the CBC. It's very different. Our macro themes aren't presented by journalists. They aren't presented by university professors. They aren't presented by influencers. They're presented by people who lived the life in macro. An example would be this year's headline political speaker will be David Stockman. David Stockman will talk to us about government debt, government deficits, servicing the debt, and the outlook for entitlements in the United States, and the impact of all that on your portfolio. How you should prepare as a saver, how you should prepare as a beneficiary, how you should prepare as an investor. What's important about David Stockman and what sets our conference apart from other conferences is David talks about this not from a journalist's perspective, not from a professor's perspective. Rather, in a biblical sense, David talks about the process from the belly of the beast. You see, David Stockman in 1980 was the director of the Office of Management and Budget in the first Reagan administration. For those of you who don't remember, this was the original Department of Government Efficiency. And David literally wrote the book on the politics of debt and deficits. Uh, that book was called The Triumph of Politics, and it describes the derailing of the Reagan Revolution in 1980. Reagan, unlike Mr. Trump, had a real popular mandate, in fact, a landslide around smaller government. David Stockman describes how in 6 months, politicians on both sides of the aisle derailed the Reagan Revolution. But not everything that Stockman talks about is 40 years old. He has a new book out about how to cut $2 trillion from the federal budget, how you would really do it, what the political probability of doing it is, and what the ramifications of not doing it are. You owe your future to listen to David Stockman. What he's talking about is the most important economic event in the world as we speak. And he speaks about it with experience, not opinion, from the belly of the beast. In fact, there's more. Danielle DiMartino Booth will talk about the Fed from the belly of the beast. You see, she is not a journalist. She's not a university professor. She was a researcher at the Dallas Fed. When she talks about the interplay between the Fed and the economy, the politicization of the economy, she's talking about somebody who has been a real player, who knows how the system works. Nomi Prins will talk about the structure of Wall Street, again, not as a journalist, but rather as a former partner at Goldman Sachs and a current policy analyst on economic policy for many different political players. Once again, Nomi Prins talks about this circumstance from the belly of the beast, the voice of a player. Jim Rickards has wonderful things to say about the intersection of Wall Street and politics. And he's well placed to do that. Jim Rickards was general counsel for long-term capital management, whose failure almost brought down Wall Street. He was literally in the room in the negotiations between the Fed, the FDIC, and Wall Street around the demise of long-term capital management. Again, a player who isn't describing the circumstance from afar, reading tea leaves, but rather somebody who was in the belly of the beast. Grant Williams talks about the financial services community in a way that very few others can. Of course, a London trader, and then later a trader for major securities houses in Asia, understanding how these big institutions work, how they think, how they employ leverage, what they get right and what they get wrong. It's important that you pay attention to macro, but it's important that the macro voices that you hear about are voices of experience, voices that come from a deep personal relationship with the subject at hand, voices that come from players rather than commentators. Once we've helped talk about the worldview, once we've established the way the world really is, not the way the big thinkers or the popular press would like you to believe, we tell you what to do about it. We bring to you analysts who have survived and thrived for four decades, in natural resources and precious metals, through bull markets, through bear markets, through all in-between markets. Too many people who I now see commenting about precious metals on social media seem to me to be influencers, who failed in technology, who failed in consumer durables, who failed in crypto. Perhaps the only sector they succeeded in was pot. At our conference, the analysts and the portfolios that you talk about, will be talking to you, will have decades of experience that's relevant experience in natural resources and in precious metals. At our conference, unlike any other conference that you will attend, in fact, unlike any other conference in the world, every public company exhibitor has been vetted. You see, at most conferences, exhibitors are regarded as advertisers. The qualification to be an exhibitor at most conferences is a pulse and a check that cashes, usually in reverse order of importance. In 30 years of putting on this conference, our attendees have told us that the exhibitors are content too. They are both regarded as an opportunity for investment and subjects to be studied. Because our attendees tell us that this is true, and that's how we organize the conference. Every public company exhibitor at the Natural Resources Investment Symposium has been vetted to the extent that they are owned in accounts owned and managed by the conference organizers. There's no guarantee that because I own shares in an exhibitor, that that exhibitor's share price goes up. But there is a guarantee that I know the exhibitor well enough that I'm willing to risk my own hard-earned money on the exhibitor shares. There is, as far as I know, no other investment conference in the world that vets public company exhibitors to the extent that I do. Non-public company exhibitors are vetted too. Bullion dealers and coin dealers, who I think are providing a really essential service in the market that we're in, are all companies that have existed for 20 years or 30 years with no customer complaints that have reached my ears. And I've listened to a lot of customers. At Everbank, we developed 275,000 customers over 14 years. At Sprott, if you include our physical products, we serviced over 250,000 investors. Tens of thousands of investors used our brokerage services. In order for a service provider to be an exhibitor at my conference, I have to have never had a customer complaint concerning that person. In fact, the process by which we vet our public and non-public exhibitors is so strict that we turn down substantially more exhibitors than we, in fact, accept. Another critical differentiator between our conference and a resource that you absolutely have to utilize is your fellow attendees. With the conference existing for over 30 years, we've developed a core of attendees, family offices, geologists, entrepreneurs, professional investors, professional speculators, a wonderful group of human beings. The idea at the conference that all of the knowledge in the room emanates from the dais out to the assembled is silly. You are surrounded at this conference by highly intelligent, wealthy people trying to become wealthier. Engage in conversations with them. Understand that at our conference, the speakers don't just speak and flee. They speak and then they wander around the exhibit hall. They listen to other people's speeches. You can find them after the conference at the bar. You can find them on the boat cruise. I had an attendee 7 or 8 years ago email me and say, Rick, following Robert Friedland and then Ross Beatty around the exhibit floor and seeing what booths, what exhibitors they stopped in front of, and in fact lurking and hearing the questions that they asked was worth the price of admission. I got the whole rest of the conference for free. So understand that one hidden one hidden weapon that we have is the extraordinary high quality of our attendees. Note too that the attendees will now have a forum to discuss the conference with you and themselves at the Rule Classroom. In other words, the conference will go on online long after the regular conference has stopped. And speaking of the Rule Classroom, it is important that you use the conference in conjunction with the Rule Classroom. The Rule Classroom has a couple hundred hours of highly educational programming, including programming on how to. It is absolutely imperative that before you come to the conference, you have reviewed some of this. In particular, the piece that Albert Liu and I did about interrogating mining company managements. If you arrive at the conference well-educated and well-informed, you will do better in terms of allocating your time and your financial resources. Of course, understand that we're going to give you 50 hours, in fact, more than 50 hours of highly detailed, highly valuable information over the 4 days at the conference. The bad news is that we're going to give you much more information than you can possibly absorb in the time that we give it to you. But there are a couple consequences of that. The first is that whether you attend the conference live or via live stream, we will have recorded the entire proceedings, including the breakout sessions. And the recordings of the entire conference will be available to you after the conference so that you can refresh your memory or gather pieces of information that you hadn't been able to gather before. And you're going to need this. I put on the conference and I myself have to play the recordings. But the truth is that the opportunity around the conference is so great, and the calls on your time at the conference will be so many that we are recording before the conference all of the exhibitors and all of the speakers. What this means is that before you get to the conference, whether you come live or whether you come online, you will have the opportunity to listen to me interview every single exhibitor. You will have the opportunity to pay attention to those exhibitors that you're interested in, and you will have the opportunity to study those exhibitors before you come to the conference. In fact, virtually every exhibitor that I have interviewed, every CEO of every exhibitor has said when I asked them who my students should reach out to learn more, almost every one of them has said, reach out to me. I'm the CEO. The buck stops with me. By listening to the interviews, you will be able to determine which opportunities are the most suitable for you. And you will be able to study those issuers, including talking to the chief executive officer on the phone or via email, even before the conference. That means when you get to the conference and you are overwhelmed with the breakout sessions, with the speeches, with the exhibitors, that you can have a business plan, that you can have a battle plan, that you can allocate your time at the conference more efficiently. You will get out of this conference what you put into it. We have given you so much opportunity to prosper at this conference that really the upper limit of what you receive is a function of your own effort. I absolutely implore you to, before the conference, listen to the interviews, both the interviews of the companies and the interviews of the speakers, as I say, so that you can arrive prepared and you can utilize your time more efficiently. One more time, use this in conjunction with the Rule Classroom. The Rule Classroom is free, the best possible price. Pay attention to the discussion groups. Understand that if you sign up for the classroom or if you are on the Rule Investment Media list, you should be receiving a free monthly subscriber letter talking about various topics in natural resources. These letters will be absolutely imperative to you before you come to the conference so that you will understand things, as an example, about the royalty and streaming business or the oil and gas business that you didn't already understand. You see, this conference, and in fact, all of the services offered up by Rule Investment Media and the Rule Classroom are meant to be used in conjunction. The conference itself is merely the focal point for the year of the ongoing effort that we make to make you better investors or better speculators. Um, for those of you who can't attend in person, by the way, we had attendees last year from 33 countries, I'm told. We're making special efforts to integrate you into the conference. We have Paul Harris, who's a wonderful mining journalist from the Mining Journal, also a commentator for Kitco, whose job it is to make your interface with the conference absolutely seamless. You will have your own online discussion groups. You will have your own ability to have Paul Harris give you sort of an annotated introduction to the speakers and the topics that are included. So don't feel as an online attendee that you were out of the game in any way, shape, or form. It is for you as an online attendee at least equally important that you listen to the pre-conference recordings and visit, if you can, personally with the executives who gave those interviews, because you won't be able to interview them in person at the conference. It's more important that you familiarize yourself with these people before the conference, because you won't have the advantage that live attendees will have for interface. Remember again that the entire conference proceedings are going to be recorded, and understand that you are going to need to play those recordings. We're going to give you a ferocious amount of information over only 4 days. And the only way that you are for sure going to be able to get your money's worth, or at least maximize the money that you spent, is by, in addition to paying very good attention during the conference, utilizing the recordings after the conference. And after the conference, you get more than your money's worth by participating in the after conference discussion group at the Rule classroom. You will be able to discuss with other conference attendees the findings of your own research with regards to the exhibitors who were at the conference. You'll be able to follow the speakers after the conference through the discussion groups at the Rule classroom. For those of you who aren't familiar with our conferences, let me tell you one more wonderful thing about them. And I hope, if nothing else that I says causes you to come to the conference, this will. We are confident enough in the value that you will receive from the conference that I'm going to make a pledge to you that no other investment conference on the planet that I know of makes. If you aren't completely satisfied with the value that we deliver, whether you attend live or online, I will refund your commission. I will refund your tuition. I will refund the charge that you paid to attend the conference. There's no other conference that I know of in the world that has a solid gold money back guarantee. But if you don't think, when the conference is done, that you have obtained value for your money, we absolutely positively will refund that money. We've been making this offer now for almost 30 years. Now, mercifully, we've delivered so much value that we've probably had to refund 0.1% of the tuitions that we've charged. But the fact is, because of the value we offer before the conference, at the conference, and after the conference, we can say with complete confidence, you have our guarantee that you will be happy, or your money will cheerfully be refunded. What you actually get out of the conference will be up to you. Start now. Listen to the pre-conference interviews. Reach out to the companies. Participate in the Rule classroom, in the discussion groups before the conference. Listen to the instructional material at the Rule classroom. It's free. In particular, listen to the discussion about how to value natural resource companies and how to interrogate mining company managements. This is absolutely critical to your getting your money's worth out of the pre-conference interviews and out of the conference itself. Ladies and gentlemen, I implore you, because the opportunities have never been greater and the risks have never been greater, the time is now. The tool for prospering rather than panicking in this circumstance, for many of you, I think, whether you're natural resource investors or precious metals investors or both, is the Natural Resources Investment Symposium. If you haven't signed up, sign up soon. If you have signed up, begin to work now. Get yourself wrapped around the conference now. Listen to the interviews, participate in the pre-conference discussion groups. Get ready to work at the conference. After the conference, play the recordings and participate in the post-conference discussion groups at the Rule classroom. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I look forward to hosting you, whether you show up live in person in Boca Raton, or whether or not we interact live stream. Regardless, thank you for your attention. Thank you for your patronage. I look forward to your participation in the conference.